Do your photos look like this? Today we'll be going over how to transform your photos from this to this photo over here. Let's get going. So when you first get into Lightroom, you're going to want to come up here to the left hand corner, add some photos. Whatever photo you want to edit. I have one of these sunset photos up right now. When you come in, it should look normally like this. You might be on the filter tab instead. And you can see like the presets I have for some of my other photos are saved up here and they make them look a lot more vivid. This is how I like to look at my photos, especially like a sunset photo. You're going to want to come to the second tab. That's going to be edit. So when you have it editing, as you can see, I took the photo pretty bright, but that's because of the sunset. The rest of the other colors are all muted along the edge, like you don't see the banks of the river, or you don't really see the car color or the bridge or any of that. That's on purpose because I want to make the sunset the main focus. So it also depends on how you shoot your shots. I try to shoot this shot like a little bit darker. It's hard to see because of the sunset, of course. But with exposure being the first one on our list, we're probably going to want to decrease exposure by a little bit. If you decrease it too much, it's going to make the photo really dark and not pop as much, especially the colors. But if you make it bright, I mean, you can't really see anything in there. It's just all way too bright. So I think a good like 84, 85 range over here is going to make the photo look the best with the colors. You want to come down to contrast. So Google defines photo contrast as the difference in brightness and color between parts of a photo. So high contrast is like a bunch of wide range tones, bright highlights, dark shadows, that kind of stuff. Low contrast is like a narrow range of colors, blends light and dark areas. But we like the simple explanation. That makes your photo either smoother or it makes it a lot more textured. I like to have a little bit of contrast. I like to have a little bit of contrast, but not too much where you can see like every break in every line, but just enough to see like there's obvious color difference. For this one, I think I'm going to go up to like maybe 22-ish. For highlights, I like to put highlights all the way at minus 100. You'll see why in a second. Apparently the actual reason to put highlights at negative 100 is to give your photos depth. I didn't know this. I was just told as a beginner to keep them at negative 100 and mess with shadows a bunch. But this makes sense and it checks out. For shadows, I increase shadows. Honestly, actually I'm going to decrease them for this photo. So for shadows, I'm looking at the edges and foreground, more like the banks along this side and the river and the bridge and all that. You can see when I increase it, they come out a lot lighter and you can see all the details, but it comes out really, really grainy. So I'm going to increase it by a tiny bit, just give like a little bit of color, but you can also decrease it depending on what you want to bring out in your photo. So white, that's going to be with the sky. I'm going to leave it where it is. I don't want it. Well, yeah. I'm going to leave it around 0, maybe like +5, just a tiny, tiny hint of more whites. For blacks, again, that's going to be similar to shadows where you're going to have the edges and more like the black colors if they're going to be turned down or up. I like the kind of like silhouette look. I like the silhouette look with like the sunset photos if you look at some of these pictures. I just think it pops a lot better. And yes, I know I'm using Google a lot for this photo tutorial, but it's a good resource most of the time. But yeah, these photos look pretty good with like the sunset behind them and all the looks. So I try to get that in this photo specifically just because it is a sunset photo rather than having the colors of like the bridge and everything. Given I want to have where you can actually see that it's a bridge and not just straight black like that. I'm going to have it nice a little bit. And you can always go back up and change the other filters. So like here you can see the photo looks a little bit dark. We're going to up the exposure by a tiny bit so it brings out a little bit more light. And you can see already how much brighter the photo is. I'm actually going to bring it up even a tiny tad bit more. And then go back to blacks and make sure, because you can see this foreground right here, how it's like all pink. Kind of want to decrease that and make it more silhouette. So yeah, you can't see the really colors of the banks, you just see that a little bit of detail. For color, this is what's really going to matter on a vibrant shot, such as the sunset shot right here that we got. So this temperature, if you come down, it's going to be more blue, go back up, it's going to be more yellow. I'm going to want a little bit of yellow here so I can bring out this foreground, the first part of the sunset, where the yellows and the reds and the oranges. Just a little bit though, so like plus 11 is probably good for this photo. For tint, it's going to be like more of your greens and purple hues. Since the top of this is more purple, I want to definitely increase the purple. If I increase it too much, the photo doesn't look realistic at all. It looks very unrealistic. Even if you increase it to like plus 70, it looks just all purpled out. You want to increase it a little bit. I'd say for this one, to bring out the top of the sunset, I like the plus 40. That also makes the little river look pretty purple and line up with the sky like it's reflecting. The vibrance is what's going to really matter on these shots. You can see turning up to 100 how vibrant it looks. I don't like the look of super vibrant shots because, again, they don't look as realistic. I like my photography to look a little bit more on the realistic side than these uber duper, like, vivid uh, color shots. So I'm going to probably take mine up a bit, like to plus 60, because that's already a bit from how it's all like grayed out to like plus 60. And you can see all the colors and the scheme coming down, which is really, really pretty. Saturation is also going to be a big factor. That's going to mainly affect the reds and yellows down here. So I'm going to want to increase that tiny bit. Again, not too much because that orangeness is just unrealistic. I'm going to try to get it like plus 30. Plus 30 is good because you can see the orange, the yellow, the red, and the pink and the blues again. For the color mixer, I'm probably going to mess with a few of the colors, but the end colors, we don't really have any greens in here, teals, not really any blues. I might mess with purple and pink depending on how they come out, but the reds, so if you mess with the hue, as you can see, the higher the hue, the more it's going to be towards the other color above it, and then darker the hue, it's going to be the color below it. So for red, it's either going to be more orange or more pink. But I definitely want it more like towards the reddish, pinkish side. So I'm going to mess with it just a tiny bit, maybe like minus 11, that's fine. Saturation, it's just going to be how saturated that is. So definitely going to want to pop it a little bit more out, like a plus 20, so that you can look at that difference. Like just a little bit brighter, but it adds so much more character. Luminance, probably not going to mess with that. It'll make the photo look not the best. So for oranges, again, that's all the oranges down at the bottom. And I want to get a little more red and towards that pinkish side, but I'm not going to mess with that too much. Saturation, again, I'm going to bring up to like plus 20, plus 15, somewhere in that range, just so it can have a little more pop. See if you look at the difference before and then after, just adds a tiny bit more color to it, which is what we're trying to go for this photo. For the yellow, I definitely want to see the yellow because you don't see it that much in the bottom. It just looks like orange, so I'm going to probably turn that way, way towards the green side on the scale. So that's 54. That's fine. Come up with that saturation, so again, I can see like it's very subtle. If you look at this tree right here, you can watch as the color like comes in a little bit more, a little bit less. I want to saturate it a tiny bit, but I don't want it too much because then these trees are also like really highlighted, as you can see, because the sunset behind it. I kind of like that look, but it depends on the person. Greens, see, there's not really any greens in the photo, no matter which way you move it. Not gonna matter. Same with teals and blues. The purples is gonna be kind of at the very top. I'm gonna want that more pinkish, maybe a little bit of purple, so keep it there. And then I want to make that pretty vibrant. I'll probably stay in that 17-ish range is good. Pink is going to be this entire top part. I'm going to want it to go with this photo. Probably just going to leave it like plus 4, not much. Saturation, that's way too saturated. You can keep it maybe a little bit higher at like 23. You can see like the gradual gradient, so it doesn't look bad, and it is very it goes color to color, and you can see all the lines and everything in it. So that was before the color grading, and then after the color grading. It also brings up the river, as you can see, a lot more. If you scroll down to effects over here, so texture is going to make either everything pop. It does have a problem of making things grainy though, so just be careful about not having too much texture. Or if you're going for more smooth shot, if you turn it down, you can see how everything like kind of blends with each other. So for this photo, since I want everything to pop a little bit, I'm going to want to increase their texture. The problem is I don't want it to get too grainy, so I'm probably going to increase it like to 13, no, maybe 20. Let's go for 20. Clarity, I mean, you can see the difference in, it's also with that blurriness versus making everything pop. I'm going to make everything pop a tiny bit, but I'm not going to mess much with clarity. Dehazing is going to be a huge one for these colors because the dehazing is going to be all those like whites and grays overlay. It's going to decrease that amount. So you can see me bringing it up just a little bit makes the sunset and all those colors so vibrant. And you might be thinking like, oh, this looks super edited. In person, it doesn't look exactly like this, of course, but in person it looks a lot more like this. I shoot my photos so they look a lot more dark and gray, just so that I can get colors out of it like this. Because if you shoot it light, then the colors are already there and it's hard to mess with the colors because they're all interconnected. Whereas these, you can take out like every single little line and mess with it. The grain, I would not increase this. The grain on the photo makes it look old and like you didn't have enough pixels on it, and it makes it look low quality. So definitely decrease that. Even with decrease, you can see all the grain in here, which is why we're going to come down to luminance down here. So this is noise reduction on Lightroom. And you can see this luminance takes out all that grain and makes everything just seamless. Like you can see how you can see, oh, a little bit of definition, that's a little bit grainy. You up the luminance a bit, everything kind of just flows together. Which makes the shot so much better. The color, not really going to do much for this photo specifically. Can be good in other photos depending on what you shoot. Sharpening, I always increase sharpening by a little bit. I don't want too much because it does bring out more graininess in the photo, especially for quality. I'm going to keep that around like 23, 25, something in there. And then when you're done editing your photo, you're going to come up to File, top left corner, come over to Export. I don't like to export to Photoshop because I don't really do anything after I get it in and edited. So you can look at how good that photo is. For my website, I mainly include a watermark so that no one can steal my images. You can do that on Lightroom. You can come over here and edit the watermark however you like to edit it. Make it look how you want. I like it in the center because then it's hard to crop out, but it's also not like too visually detracting from the image. Depends on what image you want. I mainly keep it in the JPEG file. I haven't seen any difference with it. Depends on what you're going for. Dimensions, so I would keep it as small and then the quality decently lower if you're doing like say an Instagram post on your website, something that's going to just be like a banner. But if you're going to have it printed, like I do for most of my canvases, you're going to want to keep it at full size and then 100% quality. This will make the photo about, for my photos at least, around like 20 megabytes-ish. So just be wary that you have enough space and you can put it on your website. Otherwise, I would definitely keep it at that small dimensions with like 70% quality is what I found works the best for my website and loading times. Coming down here, that's just all naming stuff and what you want to name your file. So output sharpening, you want to keep it on screen if you're going to have it on the screen. If you're going to print it, I would suggest matte or glossy. I keep them on matte because then that's more appealing to what it's going to look like on the canvas, so I keep them matte on my website. But screen definitely would work too. And then, of course, standard, just how much of the sharpening's on it. Color space, I don't really mess much with the color. I like to keep on sRGB. It just depends on what kind of email you're going, like if you're going for email, web, if you're trying to do it on display, that kind of thing. And then you just export it out to your file and then use your image.